On this episode of Arts Weekly, I'll be speaking with Derek Reeves from the Fort Wayne Philharmonic.
When you get on the stage, you don't have just your own energy to carry you through. You know, you have the energy of those around you.
And Charles Shepard III from the Fort Wayne Museum of Art.
Everything is in service of people, which turns the museum's purposes on its head sometimes, because we in the museum world always worry about the object first. I don't worry about the object first.
This is Arts Weekly.
Arts Weekly is a production of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at IPFW, offering degrees in fine arts, music, theater, and visual communication and design. IPFW, the energy of arts.
Hello, this is Arts Weekly, and I'm Chuck O'Connor. Joining me is Derek Reeves, Principal Violist of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic. Derek has been named Artist of the Year by Arts United in recognition of his significant contributions to the arts and cultural community of Northeast Indiana. Welcome, Derek, to the show, and congratulations.
Thanks very much.
You play the viola.
Yes, sir, I do.
How is that distinguished from the violin? Very similar instrument.
Well, the violin and the viola are both played at the shoulder. You know, so that you hold them on. They're both on the left shoulder, and you bow them this way. But the viola lies between the violin and the cello in size, and the tuning of the viola is actually the same as the cello. So it's got an A string, a D, a G, and a C string, as opposed to the E, A, D, G for the violin, and it's tuned an octave higher from the cello, a fifth lower from the violin.
So have you always played the viola, or do you play the cello, the violin, or you say can you play a cello, I guess, if you know how to play the viola, since they're tuned the same?
Not terribly well, you know, because the physics of the instrument are slightly different, the mechanics of the instrument, of bowing and so forth. The physical act of playing the viola is closely associated with the violin, so I have not always played the viola, but I've pretty much always played the violin, but I started the viola relatively late, but it was sort of a steep learning curve. I learned it quickly because I had grown up with the violin.
When did you start playing the violin?
I started playing the violin when I was 2.5 years old.
Wow. Did they make a small one for you? Or?
Yes. It wasn't just for me, but they make small ones. They're scaled down. My first one, I think, was 1/16 the size of a full-size violin.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. And where are you from?
Well, I'm from a military family, so we moved around a lot when I was growing up. But I was actually born in Japan, on an Air Force base in Okinawa, and we moved to Minnesota, which was the first place that I lived in the United States. And that's when I actually started playing the violin. And then we moved from there to Michigan, and then to Indianapolis in 1982. We moved to Indianapolis then.
I see.
And so we've been in Indiana ever since.
And where did you receive your training?
Well, I went to college at IU, Bloomington, and I did a...
Not a bad school, I hear.
No, not at all. Not at all. I rather enjoyed my studies there. But you know, I started playing in Michigan, so I had teachers all throughout, and you know, various summer programs and that sort of thing. And
you were actually recognized quite early, though, in your career. You played at Carnegie Hall when you were a child, or high school.
In high school.
In high school,
yes.
That's pretty good. And then you went to IU, which is one of the best music schools in the country. And you played violin there at IU, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
I see. And you played in the orchestras there. What
yes.
what kind of things did you do while you were at IU?
Well, you know, it has always been an ambition of mine. I've always loved, ever since my first experience with youth orchestras, I always wanted to be a professional orchestral musician. So that was always my career goal. And so when I was at IU, that was my focus to elevate my playing and my craft to, and I wanted to be not just in an orchestra, but I wanted to lead a section, So when I was playing violin, I wanted to be concertmaster, and then when I switched to viola, the goal became principal viola. And so I was concertmaster of, there are like 7 orchestras at IU, and I was concertmaster of 5 of them. And we also studied chamber music, and everybody studies the solo repertoire as well, because one is expected to be in full command of their instrument in any musical situation. So not just, you don't just study the orchestral repertoire, but you really, try to familiarize yourself with the whole breadth of composers' output.
The orchestral repertoire, you're playing with the entire orchestra, but there's also small ensembles,
yes.
Works that you need to learn, and solos, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's interesting, because you take any composer, say Beethoven, what a composer writes is for a huge variety of mediums, so they have their symphonic output, and then they have their chamber music outputs. Beethoven wrote wonderful string quartets and pieces for wind ensembles and that sort of thing, and then there are the sonatas for violin and piano, or sonatas for piano, every composer has this sort of range of output. And so to be, I think, a successful musician and to be a successful interpreter, one needs to familiarize yourself with the various avenues of thought, for any given composer, just to edify oneself, but also to hopefully convey that composer's music to audiences more successfully.
Speaking about the range of work, range of thought, I just saw you and many of your a few of your fellow musicians in the Philharmonic play this week at the Fort Wayne Museum of Art in a small ensemble of, I think it was a cello, 2 cellos,
yes.
The viola and 2 violins. Yes. Ensemble work, small work. Schubert's
C major quintet.
C major quintet was just a fantastic piece of music. It struck me, watching you guys play, that it must take an enormous amount of emotional and physical energy. I mean, it's so intense. The thing lasted for an hour, and you never stopped.
Yes.
And I can't imagine doing any activity that intense for an hour. How do you prepare?
That's a really interesting question, because, one of my great influences in pedagogues, Dick Dennis, God rest his soul, who's my high school director, who was concertmaster for Henry Mancini, and wonderful violinist, great human being, great director, and a huge inspiration. But he always used to say that music is a mental and physical discipline. And I think that really sort of epitomizes the approach, because there's the mental challenge of just sort of absorbing the gargantuan task of playing this piece. It was written just weeks before Schubert's death, and it's one of the, it's a monolith in the chamber music repertoire. It's actually almost symphonic in scale. It's such a big piece, but just coming to terms with the score, the voicings, the one's role within the overall composition is one aspect of it, but physically it's so demanding. I know for my part, I was really trying to prepare my, without getting hopefully too esoteric and technical, I was trying to prepare my bow arm as much as possible, because there's a huge variety of movement and energy that you have to sort of command from your arm, from very imagine like a boxer throwing punches, to almost like a statue, just barely moving,
Such a range.
Yeah, such a range just of sound and of movement, so.
But the concentration was amazing. I mean, physically, do you guys work out? Do you meditate? I don't know. The concentration and the physical ability just to play music that intensely just amazes me.
I think all those things are helpful.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. You have to. Personally, I don't think I'd be able to do what I do if I didn't exercise, meditate, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a huge piece, and you know, you never really know exactly how it's going to come out until you actually get out there and perform it. But fortunately, it went surprisingly well. A lot of it also is just the admiration and sheer joy of playing with your own colleagues, you know, because when you get on the stage, you don't have just your own energy to carry you through. You know, you have the energy of those around you, and then also there's the audience's energy, so that kind of helps. And just, you know, the love of the music, you know, because if, you know, Schubert can summarize his whole life, you know, he died very young.
He did, like 31 years old.
Yeah, 31 years old. If he can summarize his whole life and his whole work, you know, and focus his efforts and his energies, you know, in this, you know, weeks before he
You
died.
have to recreate it.
Yeah, we have to recreate it.
Hundreds of years later.
Yeah, but surely we can, you know,
interpret it.
Control ourselves and focus our own energies, you know, to do it justice.
But Derek, you're also a teacher as well. You teach in a very exciting program, Club O, down at the Boys and Girls Club here in Fort Wayne. You also teach at IPFW. I appreciate contemporary music, rock and jazz, and I know that you play that as well as much as anybody. And we noticed that, at least at IPFW, a lot of our guitar players come in, very good musicians, and we sort of train them to be classical musicians. And they come away with a great appreciation for how the classical music really is informing, you know, their rock or what other kind of music you play. Mm-hmm. But how important is it to transmit the legacy of classical music to young people today, and what's your role in doing that?
Wow, that's a great question, Chuck. I think it's hugely important. You know, I've been very fortunate to have had great teachers that inspired me and taught me a great deal. And I see it as part of my responsibility to pass on, you know, what I've been fortunate enough to learn. You know, I think that not just because of the craft of playing the violin or the viola, but also because of the immense love and respect that I have for classical music. You know, mm-hmm. There's so many different disciplines that sort of coincide to, you know, to bring about a musical performance. You know,
and it's a great way of, I think, disciplining. I mean, or instilling discipline in a young person. You know, if you can learn how to play a string instrument, you can accomplish a lot.
It's true.
That's really hard. But you know what, Derek, unfortunately we're out of time. I wish we could have more time to speak. You're doing a great job at the Philharmonic. I enjoy your performances and all your work in the community, and so I congratulate you, and we'll have you back on the show soon.
Well, thanks very much, Chuck. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For more information about the Fort Wayne Philharmonic and how you can hear Derek Reeves, please visit fwphil.org. Arts Weekly will return in a moment.